Hello, History 2 students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 20, Section 3, Latinos Organize. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some events kind of leading into this. Around the turn of the 20th century, the United States had pretty much had a steady flow of immigration coming in from Mexico. In 1910, Mexico was kind of facing a revolution at that period of time, and there was a wave of immigration that came into the United States then. About 10 years later, in 1920, about 500,000 Mexicans immigrated again to the United States. That kind of changes around the 1930s because of the fact that we had a Great Depression. We saw that about a third of the Mexican population actually left the United States, going back to Mexico. Some of this by individuals choosing to do so voluntarily, but others by faced deportation, which led to some Latinos being repatriated, meaning that if they had been born in the United States and never lived in Mexico, they might have been repatriated into Mexican society. When World War II comes around, we have a steady need for labor here in the United States. And again, we have a wave of immigration coming in from Mexico. And around 1954, the Eisenhower administration actually launched the deportation program. And over the course of several years, you're going to see a large number of Mexicans being deported back into Mexico. So with our main idea here, Latino Americans face discrimination and segregation in the American Southwest. The number of Mexicans living in the Southwest steadily increased in the 1800s and into the 20th century, of course, because the United States had acquired territory where Mexicans were living. So if you think about the Mexican War and the territory that we gained. So we picked up Texas, we picked up parts of Arizona and New Mexico and California. All of that is now going to have an influx of Spanish-speaking people into the American society. Most Mexican Americans in the Southwest lived in what is called barrios. Barrios are kind of like historically designated neighborhoods or communities where a large number of Mexicans or Latinos lived. By the time we start seeing white population coming into California, what we're going to find is that the Spaniards and eventually the Americans that come into California with the gold rush, they're going to continue to build their community around kind of the older barrios that already existed. Number 3, in the 1930s, the federal officials launched a series of deportations that became known as repatriations, which I mentioned before. Part of that is that there were individuals who actually were born here in the United States, never traveling to Mexico, that were forced to leave our country and go to Mexico and be repatriated into Mexican society. In 1954, the Eisenhower administration began a program that deported more than 3.7 million Mexicans over a 3-year period. During that period of time, you saw a situation where politicians were being criticized for this policy, and eventually this program is going to stop. At some point in time, there's going to be a need for more labor, and hence we're going to see more Mexicans coming back to the United States. Your next main idea: Latino civil rights organizations fought discrimination. The League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC, ended segregation in public places in Texas. But they did a lot of other things. There was a series of different court cases that came about, a lot of them right after World War II, like Mendez versus Westminster, where Mexican parents, for the most part, sued the state of California to end California's school segregation policy. And a couple of years later, we're going to see a similar lawsuit being filed in the state of Texas to do the same thing. In 1954, Hernandez versus Texas extended more rights to Latino citizens, and it ended the exclusion of Mexican Americans from juries in Texas. Number 6, American GI Forum was founded to protect the rights of Latin or Latino veterans who were denied medical services by the Veterans Administration. And not only that, but they were denied access to a lot of things. One of the better known fights of this forum was actually led by Lyndon B. Johnson when he helped fight for the right for a Latino soldier to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Moving on. Here we go. Number 7. Organizations and protests led by Latinos were successful on many fronts. Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, they organized groups that cooperated in a strike and demanded union recognition and increased wages and better benefits for farm workers. These are individuals who are probably most likely picking vegetables or fruits by hand, and for the most part, kind of fall kind of beneath the radar when we talk about having their working rights protected. Number 8, the group founded by Chavez and Huerta became known as the merged together into what is called the United Farm Workers, which is still an organization that is around today. It is a union. It kind of falls under the AFL-CIO. But this union in number 9 continued a nationwide boycott of table grapes. That lasted well into 1970 when growers finally agreed to meet their demands. During this period of time, a lot of those grapes were harvested by hand, and again, our workers were not necessarily being represented well by their employers, and hence they were calling for unionization here. Number 10, in 1969, the Mexican American Youth Organization, known as MAYO, led to the creation of bilingual education programs in which immigrant students are taught in their own language while they're still learning English. This has become the standard of what we call the ELL programs today that you're going to see pretty much throughout the entire nation, where students who are learning English for the first time can still receive their instruction in their core subjects in their native tongue as they are learning English during the process. Number 11, a new political party called La Raza Unida, or People United, helped elect Latino candidates at every level. And in 1969, they helped organize a protest at the University of California, Berkeley, and they staged a sit-in to demand the creation of a Chicano studies program, which basically would be a program that would teach Mexican history. All right. Thank you very much.